Welcome to Nuggets with Sauce, the podcast dishing up golden nuggets of wisdom and insight you can really sink your teeth into. I'm your host, Michelle Arentz. My guests and I serve up a saucy take on common business challenges here that feeds your hunger for knowledge and thought leadership. So let's dig in. Hey, if there's one thing that lights my fire, it is the educational space. And boy, do we have a doozy of a conversation coming up for you today about lies, and more lies in the learning space for supply chain. I am super stoked to have my guest with me today on Nuggets with Sauce. This is the amazing Casey Jenkins. Casey, I could talk to you all day, every day, but we're going to keep it shorter than that. But I know you have brought some very juicy, tasty nuggets to share with us today. But before we dive into that, I want to ask you as an introduction, Casey, not your job title. We know that. Who cares about job titles? We want to know, Casey. I mean, I know you, but I want our audience to know, like, what's getting you bounding out of bed every day and going, I'm going to make the world a better place by doing what?
Yes, supply chain and process improvement, and educating. So that's why we're probably talking about that today.
Yes, let's get smarter about supply chain.
Yes,
And, our business leaders need to get
yes,
smarter about a whole host of things, and
yes.
supply chain is definitely one of them. So I can't wait to jump into that. But just before we, really start dipping our nuggets into some tasty sauce and diving in, do you have a recommended read, watch, or listen for our audience?
Okay, so I don't do a lot of reading outside of textbooks, because that's just kind of where my space is these days.
Mhm.
In terms of watching, I have been very intrigued by this new show on Hulu, and I've not gotten to look at it yet. But it's about these moms on TikTok from the Mormon realm. And I don't really remember what the title of it is. I just keep seeing these ads and I'm like, okay. I think it's called like Moms of TikTok or something like that. I don't know. I'll have to look at what the title is.
Oh.
But it's something new. I've seen a lot of people. It just seems intriguing. So I'm like, okay, we might start like a little binge series here
Oh,
coming up, but it
Mormon
seems
moms?
interesting.
That does sound interesting. Mormon moms on TikTok. Who knows what
Yeah.
you might learn
Yes.
about?
Yeah.
Maybe they even have some supply chain ideas. I don't know. Who the heck knows? That's
Yeah.
but I think everything's fair game. I mean, again, it's just what's going on out there and what should we be paying attention to? Thank you for sharing that. Folks, check that one out. Okay, so we're gonna get saucy, we're gonna get sassy. We are gonna definitely go over some nuggets here today. So what kind of how hot and spicy are you feeling about what are we kind of mild or tangy, or where are we headed? Where are we
I
headed?
mean, I think we're headed toward the hot side of the spectrum. I
Uh,
know that I can be kind of sassy and spicy,
yeah,
so
that's
I
what
don't think people see that out of me a lot either. So
you're
it'll be fun.
the other side of Casey Jenkins here, everybody. The sassy sauce. Why do you think I invited you here? I know you've got a lot of great wisdom in this space to share. And for those of you who are watching or listening, you might not even think this applies to you. I guarantee you everything's
Oh
ultimately
yeah.
connected. You are going to get a lot of value out of our conversation here today. So without any further ado, Casey, what is on your mind about in this space of connecting the dots between supply chain and education? Those aren't usually two things you'd put draw a line between, would you? So please
Yeah.
tell us more about that.
So, one of the biggest things I've seen, and actually I knew about this well before this became a thing in the industry, but everyone all of a sudden is talking about how you need knowledge in the field to be able to, advance your skills, gain some different insights, which I 100% agree with, right?
Mhm.
However, I think that's just like kind of the new buzzword thing to latch onto. And I don't really know how serious people are about the whole educational side. And the reason I say that is because I come with two master's degrees. I'm working on a PhD in the field. Now,
Yeah.
I have been told countless times how my education doesn't qualify me to be active in the field.
Wait,
And
what?
so
You have two
yeah,
masters and you're finishing out a PhD, but you're not
yeah.
educated. And okay, can we talk about hyperinflated credentials right there? How is that?
Well, and
How is that
well, and that's the thing.
that you're not qualified?
That's a great question, because I chuckle at the fact that now we're talking about how education is needed to be able to advance skills, but yet
Yes,
I will be told by these same people, well, you don't have the experience. Okay, well, I have 11 years of experience and I have all these degrees. Like, that immediately propels me a lot further than just having 20 years of experience, because I can connect dots in different ways that most people cannot.
right.
And it's not to like highlight, oh, everyone go out and go get more degrees. But the point is that if we're going to focus on education and highlight those skills, then don't be telling those people with those skills that
Yeah.
they don't have what's needed in different companies.
Have you ever
Uh,
had the opportunity to ask these people, well, what would qualify me? Like
yeah, well,
if they're saying that you're not qualified, because there is a dynamic, interesting, weird tension out there, and I think this is percolating on the larger scale of
yeah,
the do I even need a degree anymore for this? How,
right.
for entry level, whatever, I'm going to be the mail clerk. Is there even such a thing as a mail clerk anymore at a company? But it's like, hyperinflating qualifications. Do I
Yes,
really need that? I think that's part of a broader debate that's going on, but I think it's
yeah,
interesting. Like you're sharing a really important God, I think we might, who knows where we're going to go with this, but I'm just sitting here going, as somebody who's very big on the education side, as you know,
yeah,
is a workforce development consultant and a former teacher and all that. It's like,
right.
it kind of makes you, do you think that they just don't really know what they want when they're saying that? Because I feel like there's a lot
Yes,
of companies out there and there's a lot of leaders or people trying to execute on behalf of the leaders that are like, I don't really know what we're like, what are we
yeah.
shopping for here?
Well, I think part of the issue, and I've come across this, especially in job searching, previously,
Mhm.
where these companies don't actually know what's going on in their organizations to
No,
know what type of talent they need.
no. They're
And
just
they ask for
they
these,
don't know.
right. And they ask for these qualifications. I literally had one. Now, this will probably make you chuckle. I had one a while back where they said that, it was for like a project manager. And it was like, well, do you have your PMP?
Hmm?
No, but I have a master's degree in project management.
Yeah, and a PMP is just one of the many alphabet soup
Yes,
credentials we like to throw.
yes,
So it's a project management
yes,
credential program.
yep,
Okay.
yep.
So you didn't have that,
And
but you did
yeah,
have.
right. And so here's the thing. I know what the difference between the credential for the PMP and the masters are, right? Like, because I took a master's program. I understand that. And the recruiter was like, well, you don't have your PMP, so we don't think you're going to be a good fit for this. And I said, well, first of all, I said, let me ask you something. I said, do you even understand what the difference between the PMP and the Masters of Project Management is? No. And I'm like, okay, well, let me explain, let me educate you. So I educated what the differences were, right? And then I said, do you even understand that someone in this position within the organizational framework that you have is not even going to be able to leverage PMP skill set for this, right? Because you don't have an organization that supports that. And like, well, this
Wow.
is what the hiring manager wants. And I'm like, I know but the hiring manager doesn't get it. Like, you don't need this. And like, that's something that I've encountered a lot. And I think that's why the education kind of like, I don't know, I guess intimidates some of these people, because it's like they don't really understand enough within their organization to see how like these types of skills can actually be applied, or if they're actually needed. A lot of these folks are just latching on to the latest and greatest certs and saying you need that as a way to boost their, internal talent pool. And it's like, you're not boosting shit, because all you're doing is getting these people in here and they're not using the skills that you said that they needed. And what's that going to do? That's going to push that talent out. That's not going to keep them. Like, let's wake up. Like, I don't get it.
I like you so much, Casey. That's the quote of the day. You're not boosting shit. And honestly, I think you're touching like this is hot. This is spicy. I
Yeah.
love this because I think, whether I mean your area of expertise is obviously supply chain, but I think you're hitting the nail on a lot. You're hitting
Yeah.
a lot of nails on the head here that are related that, again, anybody who's watching or listening to this might be thinking, well, supply chain, whatever, but it's like, look,
Yeah.
I think the crux of what you're saying, and I more than chuckled, I laughed and then kind of, started to feel a gag in the back of my throat too. But like, I think you're really touching on something that is so critical. Well, a lot of things that are so critical. It's like, we not just fall in love with it? And this is why I don't like titles. Okay.
Yes.
Like, can we put something out of context of like the assumption that somebody is going to make based on a couple words, or, you
Right.
letters behind your name, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. But I think too often we fall in love with somebody tells us it's like the flavor of the month or something. So
Right.
you've got to have this. Maybe it's a way to help your algorithm weed things in or out. If it doesn't
Yeah.
have this on a piece of paper, forget it. We don't really know why. We're not really
Yeah.
thinking beyond that. Hiring manager. Oh, wait for it. What did you say? Hiring manager doesn't know what they're looking for. Nobody's got a higher level strategy over there.
Yeah.
They're doing and it's really unfortunate, because do you not get the sense that on one level, when they're doing all these things, like, hey, we're looking for this credential, we're looking for this, we think it's that, whatever, they're trying to do the right things. God love them. They're trying to do
Yeah.
the right things. They think they're doing the due diligence,
Yeah.
but it's not enough. It's not, you're still getting
Right.
caught up in this very narrow-minded
Yes.
thinking that says, oh, somebody told me I should want this, therefore I'll go after it, without really
Right.
understanding. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
what are they doing in this space of, and again, the broader implication, what talent, and you talked about talent loss. You're either not going to hire somebody who could have been an absolute stellar
Right.
person in your organization because of what? 3 letters behind their name? PMP. Nope, not for me. Or to your point, it's going to drive people out the door, because you're going to hire the wrong person with what you thought was the right credential, and it's going to create more havoc once you got them in the door. Yeah.
Yes, and I have to laugh about this because it goes like you touched on something where you may not hire a candidate who actually can do the job effectively, because wait till you hear this, and I would love an explanation on this contradictory situation.
Don't we all want an explanation on a lot on these contradictory things?
I've got a situation. So I teach at universities. I'm teaching at one this afternoon.
Mhm.
It's an executive level program for folks that are high performing talent in Fortune 1 to 1,000 companies, right? So bigger
Right.
companies.
Mhm.
So I'm educating director and above
Yep.
titles. Okay. There's people in my class who I know I have interviewed with,
Nice.
and they have denied me for roles. And I've encountered that in other situations as well,
That's
where I've
priceless.
had these events where I've spoken at roundtables, or I've spoken as, at these conferences, and these people are in attendance who literally I've applied for jobs at their companies, and they told me I was not qualified. How am I not qualified to work for your company, but I'm qualified to educate you? I would love an explanation on that contradiction, because it doesn't make sense. But that's part of the problem with education in this field, and that narrow-minded perspective, is that they think they need these things, and someone may have a different skill set that is very much applicable in these different roles. They just don't know how to actually apply it.
Right.
Or they're asking for qualifications that their organization can't even support, or aren't even actually a fit. And so it's a comical thing, and I have to chuckle often. But and I see this a lot on LinkedIn. Obviously, I'm very active on LinkedIn, and you see everyone out there is now an expert in something, right? Like,
Yes,
everyone
of
is
course.
always promoting the best way to do this, the best way to do that. How do you go get more education? Here's some tidbits. Don't get me wrong, there's some great stuff out there.
Yeah.
I spend a
Yeah.
lot of hours, a lot of what I'm putting out there is textbook based. Literally,
Yeah.
I've got my textbooks next to my desk.
Which
Everything that I put out is textbook based.
which ultimately means well researched.
Yes. Yes. Yep. Yep.
Well
And
researched.
I take the time to make sure that if I'm putting stuff out there, it's founded on actual concepts and theory that are driving the
Yeah.
organ or the field.
Shame on you.
And
Shame on you for doing your due diligence. Right.
You know how many people have told me that they've learned more from me than they've learned in their jobs, and they're 40 years into this industry?
Yeah, yeah,
And it's
I
like,
can believe it. Unfortunate, which is very unfortunate, and I really
yes,
feel for those people. But yeah, I mean, again, there's a lot to unpack there, right? Like everybody and their dog is an expert. Like by the
yeah,
way, every condominium is now luxury with a gourmet
yeah,
kitchen. It's like, what else would it have? It's a refrigerator. People move on.
right,
But
yeah,
again, it's this. And what I think is also weirdly interesting about this is that on the one level, boy, we're so skeptical of expertise these days. And on
right,
the other dog is like, well, what do the experts know? I don't trust experts. So
right,
you're this, and yet we want expertise when we want expertise. And I really, honestly, I don't know the answer to the original puzzle, which I think is very interesting. And frankly, would chap my ass if I had to deal with that. Where, I mean, I don't know what is the answer to that. That like
yeah,
it's, but I think there's just some human psychology there as well. Like there's this
yeah,
perception thing that says,
yeah,
oh, when it comes from this source, like I run into that to a certain degree in the work that I do too. That it's much easier at times to be the outside voice, or
yeah,
got to have the outside quote unquote expert voice to add the credibility or give the cachet
yeah,
credibility to it. Whereas
yeah,
something internal, or if we think, depending where it's coming from, it's like you don't know what you're talking about. So I think
right,
there's got to be an element. I really don't know the answer, but I suspect that part of it. And so where are we getting caught up in these biases and fallacies?
yeah,
We've got mistaken thinking or judgment. I mean, to me,
right,
that's where my head goes anyway.
yeah,
And I guess the only other thing I can think of is, and you probably haven't done this, and I don't know if you would, but just, would be very interesting exercise to point blank ask some of these folks who are sitting in your course now at the university and asking them, hey, I just think I'm very curious. I'm a very research-minded person, and I'd love to know.
yeah, yeah,
What made the difference? Now, part of the answer could just be, well, I don't know. I picked this course, but I had no choice in who the instructor
right,
is, and I got stuck with you, Casey. And but I'm not gonna, but of course, I'm being told at work that I got to get educated, so I have to be here. So I
right,
guess I'm stuck with you. Like, whatever. Thanks, lady. I don't know, but it could
right,
be a very interesting exercise to say. But I think we do this a lot as human beings.
yeah,
Makes sense over here, not over here.
right,
This expert's okay, this one isn't. Or
yeah,
I think context matters a lot.
yes, yeah,
And but I really, I'm just loving what you're connecting the dots in the space. And yes, of course, God love LinkedIn, but I mean it's full of everything from people who think it's a dating app for the love of whatever. No, it's not. Uh
yeah,
there's other apps for that, but whatever. But it's like it's a very interesting ecosystem,
yeah,
and everybody and their dog, we all have a piece of that action that says, I know, I've got
yeah,
the, and I now just say to people, like there are no magic answers to these things. And
right,
I use medical analogies to help people understand my line of work. And I've said, like, anybody who tells you that there's a magic pill for fixing
yeah,
workforce issues or people problems in your business truly is a quack.
yes,
And I
agreed,
think we kind of run into that on a lot
yeah,
of levels where it's like, oh, if you just, and especially in the education space and and the
yeah,
workforce education, training and development, learning and development and education. I mean, yes, people need to know what to do and how
yeah,
to, why to do it, but on what level? And again, I always go back to why.
yeah,
Why are
yeah,
we doing it, and why are we making this choice and not that choice?
yeah.
Why do
Well,
they
and
need to do
it's
it all?
right. And I think that's some of, I encounter that a lot because like I said, like for me, I don't even approach my consulting from a prescriptive standpoint, right? Like I look at it from what do they actually need? There is no magic solution for
Yep,
every company that's out there. And I think the same thing can be said in terms of like educational side of things as well. Like what may be valuable to one person isn't to someone else.
right.
However, that also brings up a point within these organizations that if you're setting guidelines on what you're searching for a role, you have to have a why behind it.
Yes.
Why are these skills needed? It's
Yeah.
that like if you're putting a job description out there and you're saying this is the shit that we need to be able to help our company grow, then there should be reason tied back to that
Right.
of why candidates don't fit that, or
Yes.
why that those
Yes.
skills and qualifications are
Yes.
needed. And I can say that because I'll tell you right now, I've worked for startups, I've worked for corporate companies. I got into a corporate company where they clearly just wanted a body in the seat. They were not looking to
Wait, stop
leverage.
right there. I'm shocked. Wait, what? A
What? Yeah, I know.
wanted
I
a
know.
body on this. Oh, no, of course, what can I say? That always raises my snark to a whole new level.
Right.
But and again, that's the common issue, right? Like, we're not even sure why. We just, like,
Yeah.
all we know is we need a person. We have to check a box and say we filled a role. This person
Right.
had letters behind their name, or their resume looked good, and so good enough, and off we go,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and that's the thing is, again, I see it on LinkedIn too, of like, again, I put out like very educational stuff. Like, it's all backed by, I mean, textbooks that I paid hundreds of dollars for in my master's program. Like, I'm putting university level
Yeah.
education out there for
Yeah.
free for folks to be
Yeah.
able to learn from. And LinkedIn won't push it because it's not engaging enough. I have had more people ask about my dogs than I have about like supply chain or my services. And I'm like, no, this isn't social media. Like, I'm not here. Like, you want to know about my dogs, add me on Facebook and we can be Facebook friends, right? Like,
Right.
this isn't, to be honest, I feel like LinkedIn has just evolved into another social media site that pacifies people's addiction to social media to where they can get by with it at work,
Wow.
because
Snap.
it's business development. It ain't business development. Do you know how many arguments I sit and watch on LinkedIn all day? What business are you developing through that? Like, you look like an idiot, like, to be
Yeah.
quite frank.
And and again, another great point. Another bunch of great points. I'm like, oh my God, I have to chew faster to keep up and digest all this. But you're raising so many great issues that we're not really thinking about too. And yeah, the LinkedIn landscape has changed. But
Yeah.
again, the idea of like, I don't know, I just need a warm body in the building. Something's got to get done. Check that box. Not sure why. Lots of the why. Always go back to why.
Yeah.
Big fan of that level of thinking. And then when you're going to put it out there in these other spaces, how is it educational? Is it entertainment? Or is it a
Right.
combination thereof? Like, is it edutainment? I personally love
Right.
to be edutained. I get that.
Yeah.
There comes a time at which it's like, look, you know, I do not necessarily, and again, sometimes it's hard to wrap our heads around things like, well, supply chain, like, what's the big deal with that or whatever? Okay, let's
Yeah.
put it in a slightly different context. Maybe this will help our audience. But do you want your heart surgeon to have been
Thank you.
rigorously educated
Yeah.
by people who are in the know, rigorously educated, or do you want them to have felt entertained to keep their
Thank you.
attention up
Yes.
before they come in and
Yeah.
work on you or your loved
Yep.
one? And by the way,
Yep.
I'm just going to throw this in because I can and I will. And do you want that person to multitask?
Right.
No,
Right.
you don't. You
Right.
want your doctor, you probably want your car mechanic. There's certain things that there's an expectation and a level
Right.
of like, don't don't around with this stuff. Like this
Yeah.
stuff, it has to be at a certain level. Like, okay, when you're, burgers at the drive-through. However, if you don't cook the food right, you'll kill people.
Right.
Right? Like,
Right.
fast food chains that learn that the hard way. So you can't kind of be dismissive in a way and say, well, it's just this or it's just that. If there's a level of vigilance, due diligence,
Right.
I want somebody who is well educated from very reliable sources.
Yes.
And I don't also want it to be one and done. I would not want to have a doctor or a mechanic who's like, I took that class 10 years.
Right.
I'm good to go, right? Like,
Right.
I don't need to learn anything new or different. I don't need to keep up with what's changing.
Right.
And we could say that in the supply chain field, like that.
Yeah,
Like, is supply chain the same? Supply chain has changed dramatically since like
yeah,
the pandemic. Hello.
it has.
It's not just a case of getting good, reliable education so your people know what to do and how to do it, but are they getting the right education to keep up
Yes,
and keep
exactly.
relevant and keep fresh, you know,
Exactly.
how to think and act on behalf of your organization in a way that
Exactly.
serves you and ultimately your customers.
I can definitely say some of the stuff I've seen on LinkedIn in terms of like, I'm just going to call it out. It's immature. I've seen some of these leaders who are so immature. Like, I get it that LinkedIn is a platform where we are allowed to express ourselves. I don't want to come across as saying like it's not okay to add some entertainment in here and there,
Like
right?
being a whole human, like you're
Yes,
showing up as a whole
correct,
human being. Yeah, okay,
correct,
fair,
100%.
right?
However, it's like some of the stuff that I've seen out of some of these people, I'm like, now I get why the industry hasn't advanced. Now I get why we're falling behind. Now I understand why these things are not progressing as they should and we're not moving the needle. And it's
Are
because,
you,
like,
is there a specific, like you're talking supply chain here? Is it, can you
yeah,
just share a quick example with us of what you're, and we don't name names, whatever, but like what are we talking about here? Like what's this disconnect that you're seeing that's making you go, no wonder we're
yeah,
on the back foot into the supply chain part of the world. I'd love to
yeah.
hear what's an example of that.
Yeah, so one of the examples is visibility specifically, right? Especially with like tech companies, carriers, brokers, transportation side of things. And I see this a lot because a lot of my connections are in the transportation space. And I see how people are always preaching about visibility, preaching about visibility. We've got it. We can do this, our capabilities. And instead of actually touching on how their solution solves problems in the industries, they slap over some chat GPT generated like marketing, and then they sit and argue in the comments for attention. And so it's like, well, no wonder, like you can't even explain how your solutions are doing this. All you're not really providing any value, into what your service or your solution is doing. All you're doing is like getting something that'll get attention so people will hopefully latch on to that and you'll be able to sell from there. And like, I just don't feel like that's a valid way to actually be making change in the industry. And I'm sure someone will come at me and say, well, it drives sales. Yeah, great. Well, you know what? Your revenue is still not hiding the fact that you look stupid on LinkedIn. So it's fine because the people who actually know the industry actually are looking at you going, yeah, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
But the point is that like, instead of actually providing information on solutions or services or information about your company that's relevant and touching on problems in the field, it's like they're just using things for attention to try to drive business. And like, and maybe it's just a preference thing, right? I find it more important to me as a consumer if who I'm buying from is able to connect why it goes back to the why this is beneficial for me in my life, right? And I think
Yeah.
that it could just be a preference thing and the way that I see things, but I honestly think it's just stupid. It's like we're not seeking attention. Like let's stop seeking attention and
Yeah.
let's start focusing on the issues that you're actually solving,
Right.
and then we can come up with some sort of collaboration,
Right.
communication and sharing of ideas instead of arguing. Like it's just
Yeah.
dumb.
Or just, not the right. So thread this needle. This is the most timely thing ever. Like, are there coincidences? I don't know. So I spent some time I love that. I love what you're sharing there because I just spent time this morning with some high school students who are in a
Yeah,
year-long, they call it's an incubator program, and basically it is a year-long entrepreneurial study
yep,
program. They actively try to create their own companies. I mean,
yeah,
all this kind of stuff. They're gonna spend all year basically acting like their company and teams. And I mean, it's a
yeah.
really, really, really neat program. And I feel it's just such a cool opportunity for me because it bridges a great space between, entrepreneurship on my own is my business, as well as the fact that, I use.
Right.
So go figure what was our topic today, unique value proposition.
Yes.
And what
Yeah.
needs to be in your UVP? We love to throw those letters out, but walking and talking it through and telling, these are teenagers, but saying, by the way, a lot of adults struggle with this. They're not very clear
All of them.
on,
Yes.
and the ultimate thing that, that we're teaching these young people. So, I don't care if you're 15 or you're 55, it all applies. Like, look, the
Yeah.
focal point should be, who are you solving a problem?
Yes. Yes.
And in doing that, like, how are you doing that? Yes, how are you going to be different or better or whatever? And then connect that dot back to the people as well. Do you have the
Yes.
right people with the right skills, knowledge,
Yes.
capabilities
Right.
to help you in your organization
Yes.
tackle some element of that problem that you're solving for your customer? If it all doesn't
Right.
align and track back, to hell with it. Why are
Right.
you doing it? But I
Yes.
think we also love living, unfortunately, we're in a world right now where we love the 10-second sound bite,
Yes.
short attention spans. Uh,
Yes.
we are prone to liking fluff and bluster, is the nice way I'll put it. We like the bullshit dog and pony stuff
Yeah.
as opposed to like the substantive stuff. So we're not usually digging in and really thinking about, like,
Right.
are they really helping me solve my problem? How are they really doing that? Do they really know what they're doing? From a consumer standpoint, or when
Right.
someone's saying, I've got answers, answers to what? And where
Right.
do those answers come from? So I see
Yeah.
there's a lot of, like, not connecting the dots in these spaces. And you think, especially in supply chain, like, everything has to be connected. I mean,
Right.
it's the absolute
Yes.
web of all things. You are trying to get things from A to B to C to D to whatever out to
Right.
your customer, and any hiccup anywhere along the way, oh, I
Yeah.
get my new whatever, my new shiny toy on time. What the hell is, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Why is that? Because now you've just created another problem for me.
Right. Yeah.
How are you going to fix
Yeah. And it's
it? Do you have the right people who could even do that?
right. Well, and it again, it goes back to the why, right? And like you said, I think a lot of people tend to focus, and this is again what I've been seeing, especially through LinkedIn. They tend to focus on getting attention,
Yeah.
right? But they're not actually focusing on, to drive revenue or to drive sales. But then it's like you get that, but do you actually have the infrastructure in place or the people in place to be able to execute on that? And are you actually solving a problem? And I think, it goes back to just like you said, the way of the world right now, where everyone wants their 15 minutes of fame and, oh, let's be TikTok famous or whatever. And like, kudos to you if that's what
Yeah.
you want to do,
Andy
right?
Warhol said a long time ago, 15 minutes of fame. I think we're down to 15 seconds.
Yeah,
Never.
yeah. And it's like, I mean, and that kudos to you if that's what you want to do and that's how you want to approach it. But and again, it could just be my preference on things, right? And why I come at it from this angle is because it's like I look at the field itself and I'm like, I want to solve actual problems. Like
Right.
I don't, and I get pissed off when people call me an influencer. I can't stand it. I literally can't stand it because I'm not here to influence you. Like what I'm telling you is not influence. That is like conceptual foundational theory and concepts that the entire industry is built on. I'm not trying to sway you of, oh, this is how supply chain works. No, like
Yeah.
this is how supply chain works. And I've got the education to
Yeah.
back that up. And
Yeah.
it's like, I'm not trying to be an influencer. Like I don't want to be an influencer.
Mhm.
And I think that's the problem is too many people think like, oh, if I become an influencer, then I'm going to be able to sway you on what, services I provide or whatever. It's like, yeah, sure, maybe that works, but like I don't want to do
Yeah.
that.
Well,
Like that's not me.
if I can make a really bad supply chain joke, but however, when the rubber really hits the road,
Thank you. Yep.
it'll boom. Sorry,
Yeah.
people. But when you get to that point, then it's like all that front end sparkle and glitter comes off. And so,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, as anybody who's out there listening, like, do your due diligence and ask
Yes.
questions. Whoever is part of your supply chain, if you are in the game in your business, or you're going into the game in your business where you're going to be like, we're going to need a supply chain, or if you're even asking yourself, do we have the best supply chain that we could have? Like, do we
Right.
have opportunities for improvement? And guess what? You're going to have to educate yourself around.
Yes.
You're going to have to probably, get some
Yeah.
expertise from somebody like you, Casey, or, whatever, not just any old person who blows fluff and smoke.
Yes.
Really ask good questions, really get educated, or get the people who you are spending a good dime and a good paycheck on, make sure that they are well educated so they know the right questions
Right.
to ask,
Yes.
so that they know how to be part of the solution, not the problem. Because at the end of the day, it's
Yes.
all going to hit your customer.
Yes.
Sooner or later, if you're creating problems instead of fixing problems, it's going to hit your customer. How are
Yep.
you making that? And then making sure that, yeah, like get the right education for yourself as a leader, get the right education for make your people knowledgeable in the right ways, not based on some
Right.
credentialed bullshit thing,
Yes.
whatever
Yes.
letters go behind their name, like real, true, however that works for you.
Yeah.
Get smart, get smarter. Don't fall for the,
The hype.
don't focus on what's at the front end of the circus tent. Go look at the trailers out back, so to speak.
Right.
See what's really going on. Yeah. Cause
Yeah.
I agree. Like I think there's a lot of missteps along the way because it's quicker and easier and more satisfying up front, to your point, to get these fluffy pat answers, people who say that, but we digging in and doing your due diligence, digging in, really truly getting educated takes effort and time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the reward for it is so much better than we have 15 seconds of pat answers over here, and now we've got 15 days of problems to
Right.
heads around to fix.
Right.
We just did.
Yeah.
Fair?
Well, and I mean, yeah, and it's so funny that you say that because there's been so many times where I actually just wrote about this yesterday. I read an article from a very reputable site and I read it and it wasn't even foundationally correct. And I'm like, but this is what people are reading. Or I see the posts on LinkedIn of advice on how to do things. And I'm like, that's not even foundationally correct. And like, there's a lot of misinformation out there. I get that 100%. But, as leaders of organizations or leaders within organizations, you're right. You do have to educate yourself to understand how this stuff works, to make sure that you know what you're searching for, you know what's going on within your organization, and you're able to effectively make these decisions. Because guess what? There are a lot of good salespeople out there. They will blow smoke up your ass all day if they can land a sale. And guess what? There's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and there are a lot of liars. I can say that 100% because I know quite a few of them.
Yeah.
And
And we don't want people to be scammed. Like this is
correct.
where, we're trying to protect you, protect your business, protect your, in every which way and protect your customers. I couldn't agree more. And it's like, hey, do your due diligence.
Yes.
Make the time available to really, fact check around where are the sources, reliable sources. Does more than one person agree with this? All those kind of,
right.
yes, does it take a little more time and effort? Sure does. Is it worth it?
Yes.
And 47%.
Yeah.
It does. Oh, I got so squeaky and excited there. Listen, we could talk all day about this. I think we're going to be having you back for more. This is I love that you really connected the dots here though, because I think this is a super important thing that, the real takeaway here is get yourself supply chain, yes, or anything else in your business, get yourself and your people well educated, very knowledgeable, with really good sources of information, really reliable, validatable, big word there, validatable, right sources, right people, right experts like you, Casey Jenkins, who really know what you're talking about, because otherwise you're not solving problems, you're creating problems. Nobody wants or needs that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your nuggets with us today. So appreciate you, Casey. Thanks everybody for tuning in. This has been another episode of Nuggets with Sauce. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Nuggets with Sauce. I hope we fed your appetite for insights and information on how to improve your business. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never go hungry for more valuable thought leadership.